Today on the Big 6 in 60, Kansas gets another big Monday win, this one over Houston.
This win, from a resume perspective, is really impressive for KU.
North Carolina picks up a ranked victory against Louisville.
Massive victory over Louisville inside the Smith Center on Monday night.
And Victor Wembanyama leads the Spurs past the Pistons.
A classic all-out rock fight, if you will.
This is the Big 6 in 60, the 6 biggest national sports stories from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now. Thank you for making the Big 6 in 60 your first listen of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. The Kansas Jayhawks bounced back from a loss over the weekend and took down number 5 Houston to keep Bill Self undefeated at home on Big Monday. After the win, Derek Johnson recaps on Locked On Jayhawks.
Kansas wins by 13, and this win, from a resume perspective, is really impressive for KU. It puts them in the at least tied top 5 in college basketball in most quad 1 victories. So already inherently, that's a boost to your resume. If you're looking at quad 1A wins, which is just kind of a more refined, even better, the elite of the elite victories, this now puts Kansas in a position where they are just one behind the lead. Duke has the most quad 1A wins. They have 7. Kansas has 6. So they're one behind there, again, in the top 5 in quad 1 wins. This is a huge resume booster. You look at now, I think Graham Doran, who we're going to have on later this week to talk more bracketology, tweeted this out earlier after the win. He said, Kansas becomes the first team to notch victories against every member of the Big 12's Royal Six, which BYU, Texas Tech, Iowa State, Houston, and Arizona. I mean, that is such a huge boon in a world where teams are playing unbalanced schedules, right? Kansas had to play Iowa State and Arizona as part of their schedule home and home, but where some of these other teams only have to play some of the other good teams maybe once, right? And so Kansas got a tough draw with all of this, but all the teams you played one time, you now beat. And that is important for a couple of reasons. One, it's important for the resume and showing that you're a really good team, which I think they showed again in this one. It also is important from a standpoint of, getting another resume win, showing you can do it with Darren Peterson in the lineup. If you're KU, that's obviously important. And that's something I talked a little bit about and dispelled in the preview, because now KU has 5 top 30 wins. If you're looking at KenPom, with Darren Peterson in the lineup, they only have 2 without him. So they still do have a better resume with Darren Peterson. But it's so important too, because as we've been talking Big 12 tournament and Big 12 seeding and getting a double bye, the importance of those extra days off when you have the Darren Peterson situation and just in general a not as deep team, you now have the tiebreakers over BYU, Texas Tech, and Houston. And it's not just the tiebreakers for the Big 12 tournament. What if at the end of the day we're talking about, hey, should Kansas be a 3 seed or should Texas Tech be a 3 seed? And Kansas has the head-to-head, right, for the NCAA tournament, not just the Big 12 tournament. What if Kansas keeps winning games and we're talking about on the 2 line? What if we're talking on the 2 line, hey, should Kansas be the 2 seed or should Houston be the 2 seed? Well, Kansas beat Houston by 13 points. These are huge wins that boost your resume. That could be the difference of getting a slightly easier path to making a deep run in March, right? So those are all important. Again, though, I don't want to understate the importance of having a win like this with Darren Peterson, because this was the type of win that you had to grit out, that you had to be tough. If you're going to beat Houston, you have to be tough physically and mentally. And with all the discourse and stuff going on around Darren Peterson, this wasn't the most pleasing game that Darren Peterson played. This was not a game that Darren Peterson is going to look up at the box score at the end of the day and go, I was 5 of 14 shooting. I had 14 points. But the fact that he stayed in there all the way through to the very finish, the fact that he was there, and I don't know, some spiritual level of fighting through it with the team, I think comes kind of important here for KU to get through it. And so the win in general is just the biggest positive here, right? And I think in general too, like a theme that we have had all season for this Kansas team, it's been what? It's been powering through adversity and the type of grit that this team shows. Think about the adversity, not just of coming off a loss, not just of losing to Cincinnati, but you think about the adversity of how the game started. KU gets a nice and one from Bryson Tiller to get the game started, and then Houston scores 11 straight points. And immediately you're down in a hole 11-3 after we just saw what happened on Saturday, but you climb back, you fight back, you grit it out, you end up taking a 4-point lead at halftime. You have a little bit of an offensive run at the end of the first half, but it was more about KU's defense just shutting down Houston at the end of the first half to allow that run, right? Showing that level of determination and grit and powering through for Kansas was so important, and continued that theme that we've kind of seen all season long. The defense was really good for KU in this one, right? Maybe a little fortunate of how Houston shot from three. There were a couple open ones that maybe Cenac missed, and that was something Kelvin Sampson mentioned in the post game. Maybe a few here or there that one of their guards missed and stuff. I did think overall, though, a lot of the ones that the guards were taking, right? There's one I can think of that Sharp was just like wide open and he missed. But I will say a lot of the ones that Flemings or Sharp took were pretty well contested by KU in the end. Like the Cenac ones were open, but he goes 1 of 4. Like, okay, even if he goes 2 for 4, it doesn't change the game, KU did a really good job defensively in this one. You hold Houston to 32% from the field. That's going to win you a lot of games. We're just talking 2-point shots. They were 16 of 32 from the floor. And you did a good job avoiding fouls. You did a good job of I get it. Houston still had 13 offensive rebounds. We've seen some games this year where KU's given up too many offensive rebounds. And maybe in a normal game to a team who's not a great offensive rebounding team, I would be sitting there going, yeah, 13 offensive rebounds given up is maybe a little bit more than you would like. But against Houston, a team who is one of the best year in and year out offensive rebounding teams in the country, like even after this game, they're top 25 in the country in offensive rebound rate. But at the end of the day, this was Houston's 3rd worst offensive rebound rate of the season. The only games that were worse, TCU, a game they won by 9, the Iowa State game that they lost, and now the Kansas game. So actually, this was a really good defensive rebounding game for KU, and part of playing good defense is grabbing the defensive rebound, and they did an excellent job of that. How about Trey White? I mentioned him a little bit earlier, 23 points, and this is a guy we had been talking about in a little bit of a rut for KU, and he really did a little bit of everything of what we had seen when Trey White was looking like an NBA player to get back into it this game, right? He was efficient. He goes 6 of 9 from the floor. He was making 3-point shots. He goes 3 of 4 on 3-point shots. And I think above all, this is the big one for me with Trey White. Kansas as a team is not a great team at getting to the free throw line, but Trey White is, when he is on, a really good player at getting to the free throw line. And he did in this game. He goes 8 of 8 at the foul line. So it's not just that he was getting there, he was making them. He goes 8 of 8. Houston as a team goes 9 of 9. So, it's very easy to correlate, hey, KU is at their best when Trey White is playing really well. And so much so that, this was a game you only got 4 points from Flory Badunga. If I would have told you coming into this that Flory was only going to give you that you were going to get just 6 points from the bench, albeit, the KU bench isn't typically one that scores high totals, but still, you were only going to get 6 points from the bench, 4 points from Flory Badunga. I don't know how good you would have felt, especially if I told you, on top of that, Darren Peterson's only going to go 5 of 14. How good would you have felt about the win? But because Trey White went off, because you got some timely buckets here and there from some other guys, got to the free throw line, because the defense was that good for KU, you win this game by 13. And yes, it was also positive to see Darren Peterson play this game to the very end in what was a physical game. I mean, Houston was denying him the basketball all the way through, and Emmanuel Sharp was all over him all game long. So he had to really work just to even get the ball, and that was impressive there too. Now, if you do want to point nits and say, what are some of the negatives of this one? I mean, if you wanted to, you could point to the fact that KU didn't have the biggest post scoring effort. Even Tiller's 11 points didn't really come mostly in the post. Flory only got 4, but that's just kind of playing against Houston. I don't really want to get into the negatives of this one. I just want to celebrate the win. It was a 13-point win for KU over a top 10 opponent at home. And for that reason, you got to be happy with it. And bottom line, this is a gigantic win, as we talked about earlier, for the resume. It's a gigantic win for just, feeling right again after losing that Cincinnati game.
Ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into a reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on an NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for 2. That's right, flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in. Not only can your pick cash, but it could also send you to the finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Welcome back to the Big 6 in 60. North Carolina hosted number 24 Louisville last night and came away with a 3-point win over the Cardinals. Locked On Tar Heels host Isaac Shade goes over the box score.
Massive victory over Louisville inside the Smith Center on Monday night, 77-74. So close. My score prediction for this game was 78-75. Each team just needed to make one more free throw, and they both could have done so. Good grief. Speaking of that, this game did not have to be so stressful. Why y'all doing? I'm an old man. My ticker can't handle such things as this, but now it's over and my heart can breathe happy again. But a win all the same for the Tar Heels. Definitely a few things to work on. The Heels run their record to 22-6 overall, 10-5 in ACC play. They stay undefeated at home, 16-0. Importantly now, Carolina holds the tiebreaker not only over Virginia, not only over Duke, although they got to play them again, but also now over Louisville, who is right in the same spot in the standings as the Tar Heels. That could become critically important. Unfortunately, on the flip side of that, as you well know, Carolina doesn't hold the tiebreaker against NC State or Miami. That's important because right now the Tar Heels are tied for 5th with Clemson, who, by the way, Carolina plays at home next Tuesday night. Another really, really big important one. Now a game ahead of Louisville and a half game back of both Miami and NC State for 3rd and 4th place in the ACC. And that's why these games that the Heels shouldn't have lost are so frustrating, because you'd be in that double bye position already had you not done so. But you did, fine, whatever. Interestingly, Carolina stays in the exact same spot at Ken Palm, 30th, 31st in offensive efficiency, 38th in defensive efficiency. This is officially a party show. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. I don't care how stressful. I don't care how frustrating. That, yes, there are some therapy pieces mixed into this show, undoubtedly. But all in all, this is a party. By the way, this is not the only live show I'll be part of tonight. Later on, midnight Eastern, 11 Central, 9 Pacific time, we're going to have a live CBB college Locked On College Basketball squad show, unpacking the night, unpacking the new top 25, the top 16, all of that. Come join us. That'll be on the Locked On College Basketball channel. Larry Brown was in the building Monday night. Great to see him in there. All right, here's where we head if you're brand new with us on these live postcasts. We will look big picture at the game. We'll look at some nitty gritty of it. We'll look at what it means going forward, all that, so much more. We'll take a couple breaks. We'll look at your comments over there. So if you got questions or thoughts, drop them in over there and I'll go grab them later on. Carolina wins this game. Let's look big picture at it. I had said on today's show, the Tar Heels have a 3-game homestand before they go to Duke next Saturday night, March 7th. This game tonight, home against Louisville. Home on Saturday, Virginia Tech, late, 8:30 Eastern. And next Tuesday, as I just said, against Clemson. My thing that I had said is Carolina, to just feel good and feel like they've got the foundation they need to win 2 out of 3 of those games. And you know what's great about what they did? They just won, at least on paper, what is the hardest, most difficult of those 3 games. Now, you could certainly go mess it up by losing to Virginia Tech and or Clemson, sure. But you've taken care of business tonight. Again, more difficultly than you had to, but you got it done, and that's what matters. But now you got to continue to follow it up and continue to build on that success. Another reason I thought it was critical to get this win tonight is because this is now the 4th game without Caleb Wilson. In the previous 3, Carolina has beaten the teams that they were supposed to clobber, and they got basically clobbered by the team that was good in NC State. You know, Pitt, not great. Syracuse, not great. Carolina beat them, that's great. But what you needed to prove to the committee is that, hey, look, we are a legit club even without Caleb Wilson. And that's not to denigrate Caleb Wilson. That's to lift up the rest of the roster. And that is why tonight is so important. to say, hey, you see our biggest cheerleader over there on the sideline? Even though he's our best player, our guy Trimble's out here dropping 30 tonight. And that proves to the committee that, hey, yes, we were already planning to take Caleb Wilson's injury into account, but now that Carolina has this great quad one victory at home over Louisville, even without him, that to me cements Carolina into that kind of 5-7 range, assuming they don't drop the ball. Like, there's nothing again at Duke. You could lose that game and it's not going to ding you that much because you're expected to lose that game, right? The probability is that Carolina will lose that game. So honestly, the two games that matter most right now are Saturday, Virginia Tech, and Clemson next Tuesday. Got to win those games. Do not mess around. Don't get high and mighty off of this. You shouldn't get high and mighty off of this because there was enough that you left on the board, on the floor, that you need to go take care of business. And what was also really interesting was, remember, let's think early in this game, and we'll talk about how that came to be, but the Tar Heels were down 10, 23-13. They go on I think it was 30-6 run from there. And then they were back in the game and they just methodically worked their way to get this big lead. And man, that was so critically important. But I was curious to see, all right, the Tar Heels have this 1-point halftime lead. They've proven to themselves that they can compete with one of the top teams in the nation, even without Caleb. Can they now do it for 20 more minutes? And at least out of the gate, absolutely they could. And then they just held on for dear life while missing a bunch of free throws. But they did it. And what I love, I just alluded to it, but once again, Caleb Wilson, not moping, not like, all right, fine, good job, fellas. Dude, Caleb Wilson on that sideline, cheering like crazy, urging on his team, demanding excellence. When the rest of the roster is sitting down, he is up. It is incredible. All right, we got to get to Seth Trimble. How have we not talked about it? Career high 30 points. This, how many times have we all talked about Memphis Seth Trimble? Man, this was Memphis Seth Trimble tonight, you guys. Previous career high, 27 points last year against Dayton out in the Maui Invitational. This was his fourth career 20-point game. His second highest career game ever was 22 points earlier this year out at SMU, and just blew past that. What I love, Seth was in attack mode all night. Like Louisville has great guards, and they had nothing to stop. He got where he wanted at will in this basketball game. And man, I was so pleased for Seth and for what he did. And I tell you what, Carolina needed every single one of those points and could have used a couple of the free throws he missed too. And I know Seth's going to be really upset with himself about that. Seth was also Carolina's, interestingly enough, leading turnover person in this game, but fine, whatever. As I said, you got it done, and that's what matters. 30. Seth Trimble just scored 30 points. Incredible stuff. It's interesting because in this season, Seth Trimble has had his most incredible singular moment as a Tar Heel. Obviously, we all know what that is. I'll just say the three, and you know what I'm talking about, which oddly enough, Seth hit his first three tonight that he had hit since said three. But that was his best moment as a Tar Heel. This was his best game. Because, sure, as I just said, he was Carolina's leader in turnovers. And he was 7-11 at the free throw line. He's going to be upset about that. And he had the 30 points on a very efficient 11 of 16 from the field. But maybe the thing that's most important that Seth Trimble did in this game was what he did defensively. We'll talk more about it on the other side of the break. But, man, there have been a couple times this season when Carolina, think about it, has been blitzed by opposing guards. And tonight, Seth Trimble was not going to allow that to happen, and he demanded the same out of his teammates. That senior leadership is what Carolina needs from him, and he's been given it. It's just there have been a couple times when neither he nor the rest of the backcourt could slow down great guards. But tonight, let's not miss the job they did.
The Spurs used 21 points and 6 blocks from Victor Wembanyama to pick up a win over the Pistons last night. After the standout showing, Casey Vieira and Devin Brown recapped the matchup.
A big-time San Antonio Spurs victory this evening in Detroit against the league-leading Pistons, a 114-103 victory on national television. And a classic all-out rock fight, if you will. The officials let them play, and as a result, it got fun. It got interesting. He, of course, is NBA champion Devin Brown. I'm Casey Vieira. Last time we were talking about a notable Spurs Pistons game, my friend. You were involved, and it turned out pretty good. End of the night, an NBA champion. They don't end the night's NBA champions tonight, but pretty good feeling nonetheless.
Yes, sir. We got a lot to talk about, Casey. Let's get into it. But I'll tell you what, Spurs grew up tonight.
This is what you'll be talking about.
Yeah, and as we know, an 8-game win streak coming into this thing, perfect on the rodeo road trip so far, 4-0. But Detroit, every accolade that you could possibly give them right now, deservedly so, 43-12. They were actually in the middle of a stretch right now where they have a homestand between the Spurs, Oklahoma City, and Cleveland, and then Cleveland and the Spurs on the road in less than a week. So there's some pivotal basketball, some show me something type basketball that was going on the Pistons side of things as well. And on the Detroit aspect of it, though, they didn't come out looking like they had they were ready to prove anything, because the Spurs opened the game on a 14-2 run, and things kind of level out because of all those things, the physicality, the muscle, and part of the reason, again, why they played as well as they had, as Detroit has. They go up 27-24 after the first quarter of play. The second quarter, and we'll dive into this back in a little bit more. Victor, awful shooting first half. De'Aaron Fox, awful shooting first half. Somewhere the Spurs had to generate some sort of offense in the second quarter, and they did. Devin Vassell, Julian Champagnie combined for 30 points. Collectively, the team as a whole, they go 11 of 23 from three in the first half and ultimately carry a 2-point lead into the halftime break, subsequently into the third quarter. And then we see San Antonio turn up the defense to 11 a little bit, because they hold Detroit to 7 of 22 in the third quarter of play to ultimately balloon that lead, crack double digits by the time it hits the fourth. Fourth quarter, Pistons, understandably so, they were going to make their runs, and they did. And they got within 9 a couple of times. But some big-time blocks for Victor Wembanyama. He had 3 in the fourth quarter, and some big-time buckets, just pure shot-making. Devin Vassell again, Champagnie again, Keldon Johnson, 3 consecutive threes in the closing few minutes that essentially put the game away. Math reads to a successful night for the Spurs, 114-103. Wemby grinds his way to 21-17 and 6 blocks. Devin Vassell, the high man, he has 28, 7 of 11 from 3. De'Aaron Fox, 10 points, 7 boards, 7 assists, 4 of 17 shooting. The numbers on Cade Cunningham, this is the notable one. 16 points, 5 of 26 they hold him to from the field. Massive win collectively all the way around as they move to 41-16. A massive show me something, and we're running out of ways to, believe how the Spurs are not going to win big. Don't have something's going to hold them back, and this is just another one of those growing moments for the better again tonight.
Yeah, and I love what you're saying about the Spurs and finding a way to win and finding a way in tough environments, and this is probably the toughest. Number one in the East, Detroit is. And, San Antonio went in there and got off to a great start. Devin Vassell in the first 3 of the game. And, when you talk about that second quarter and the things that Detroit tried to do, San Antonio just stayed with what it is that they were doing, stayed together, continued to move the basketball. And I think what opened it up in the third and fourth quarter was the fact that Vassell and Juju were hitting their outside shots. Wemby chipping in at times, Fox doing the same thing. But, Casey, it was big because in that second half, now the Spurs were able to regroup, having a 2-point lead. And then I think they just decided that they knew that they needed to play their type of basketball, and Detroit had to chase them instead of it being the other way around. Hence, we saw them get a lead, and Detroit played catch-up all night. They have a fantastic group, on that side, and we'll see them here, in the next month or so. But as for tonight, I think San Antonio answered the challenge of playing in a tough environment. And, during this 8-game streak, they've got criticized for the opponents they played. Well, tonight on national TV, they stepped up and got the job done.
Yeah, Pistons shoot 38% from the field, 7 of 36 from three. So mental math tells me that's less than 20% from three. They scored 21 points off 16 Piston turnovers. That was an aspect of it as well. So much to like about something like this. Because what has been the overwhelming fear for a lot of people when it comes to the playoffs and the games slow down and you face a physical team, it's Victor getting knocked down, Victor getting beat up, and all those things happened tonight. He got clobbered in that first half. You know, these national TV games, every time they see a physical team and Victor on standby, they have the packages ready to go, right?
They're ready to go, Casey. Yes,
and they're ready to go. And against a team like a Detroit, it takes about, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes in real time to put it all together. But you saw this a lot in the Houston game a couple weeks ago in Houston, the one that the Spurs won, was that they played physical in that same exact fashion that they did against Victor. And a lot of the times prior to that, it was Victor just kind of like, oh, dust myself off, keep going, just kind of go through the motions, not exactly look like winded or taken back, but not look like he took it personal, you know, not necessarily get mad or fired up or something like that. That's kind of, I guess, the basic way of what I'm trying to get at. But like you saw in the Houston game where he went off in the fourth quarter on so many, where he outscored the Pistons or the Rockets in that game in that fourth quarter, if I'm not mistaken. And then you saw it again tonight, but not on the offensive side, on the defensive side. Those three block shots, it felt like he had 6, but it felt like 16 the way he was doing things. You love that aspect of Victor being able to do that, because that is the type of thing we've been hearing, and some of it deserves skepticism along the way of whether or not that will hold them back in the playoffs. Victor's ability to adapt, Victor's ability to dust himself off in these type of situations, you know, be aggressive, be physical back. You're not bigger and stronger than Jalen Duren, but you know what? Find another way to impact the game and get the better of him. Duren got some blows in on Victor tonight, you know, literally and figuratively. Jalen Duren, he had 25 and 14. You know, he's a big boy. We were talking, he reminds us of Kevin Willis back in the day, you know. But point being, the overriding point that we're going at and that I loved was that this was a show me something game from Victor, and he showed up. Not necessarily on the offensive front, not necessarily from the numbers front, but from a physicality, you know, aura aspect of if you will, establishing your presence. This is awesome stuff from Wemby tonight.
Well, yeah, because I love what you're talking about, and what it was is, you know, Victor at key times of the game, Spurs being up 6, Spurs being up 8, being there as a presence, altering a shot, Detroit having to go with a higher floater or, you know, not be able to get an offensive rebound. So, yeah, Victor didn't throw the 30 and whatever at you and things like that, but just his presence out there, the common effect that he had on his teammates was huge for the Spurs tonight. And I'll tell you what, I hadn't seen Detroit or Cade Cunningham play a whole lot of basketball, but he is a physical guard, and he picked up his second foul, giving Victor an elbow on the cut. So when you talk about the shots that Victor took tonight, for him to be able to bounce back, all right, and next play, what are we going to do, this and that, it was a different Victor tonight, and that's what you love to see, because, yes, I don't know if there's another basketball team as physical as the Detroit Pistons. They showed it tonight, but Victor and the Spurs were able to rally past that and get a huge win.
And I'm glad you brought up the Cade Cunningham foul, because the turning point tonight happened in the second quarter, ironically enough, off of a Cade Cunningham foul.
Time to reveal where the game was won or lost. It's the turning point.
More specifically, his third personal foul. And it comes of the offensive variety, because Stephon Castle up in his business. Cade, for a guy who is MVP pursuit candidacy, valid candidacy of a pursuit, in my opinion, and he'll be the first to tell you can't make plays what he made in this situation. Castle right in his business, shoves him right to the ground. Both teams get in the way. Keldon picks up a tech. Duren picks a double tech up, picks a tech up, the double tech's whatever, moving on. That's not necessarily the point I was getting at. The point that I was getting at was that it put him in foul trouble, because early in the third quarter, I should say, he picked up his fourth foul. Early in the fourth quarter, he picks up his fifth foul. Now, largely, he did a good job of staying on the floor, but between the efforts of Castle getting in the way, between the efforts of really collective, but it needs, if you're not going to slow down Cade Cunningham 9 times out of 10, you're not.
Right.
But you can be an irritant. You can create trouble. You can get him off of his game. 5 of 26, he was off of his game because he had to play different. Like you said, a very physical guard. And when you can't be physical, that's a big aspect that he doesn't have going for him. And by all those things collectively as a whole, the foul trouble taking him out of his game, it really exposed Detroit tonight. And it really showed that if the Spurs are going to win big and maybe meet this team in the finals, who knows? Who knows? Never know. This is what they have to do, match that physicality, especially when it comes to, one of the best players in basketball, maybe even the MVP.
If there's anybody, that watches San Antonio, you learn tonight, and of course, a lot of us have already known how important Stephon Castle is to the San Antonio. Now, I know Victor gets a lot of the accolades, and they're well-deserved. Fox, same thing. But let me tell you something. The job that he did on Cade Cunningham in that first half, when someone open hands pushes you like that, you've gotten to them. All right. I've had one of the greats push me like that. That's when you know that you've got him. And I'll tell you what, Castle did a great job on him, and just put him on the list because Castle does that pretty much in all of his matchups. So great job by him tonight. Just playing Spurs defense.
Mm-hmm. They did. And I think that's the only way to describe it. And we're just learning so much more and more about this team every day and reasons to believe. I have been called a skeptic. I have been called the Debbie Downer of the two of us. I have been told that people want to tune in like, man, Case, you're a buzzkill. Let them live. I don't think I don't being negative. I think I'm being real, right? No perfect, no product is perfect. And we talk about the flaws because we have to. As someone who has been accused of such, and listen, I will acknowledge that has been the case. I'm running out of ways to be skeptical, man. I'm just in a year that, and I think this is what has me believing too, more so than any other year. It feels like 2026, the league is wide open. It is wide open. There is no powerhouse on every single side to get in the way. So you pair what the Spurs are doing right now and the fact that there's so much parity. Why is it, crazy to say that this team isn't the title favorite right now or close to deep in that conversation, as good as any, maybe not the favorite, but can't be considered as good as anybody else is what I'm kind of going for.
Well, what helps is the fact that they can shoot the three so well. It helps that you have Wemby, and it helps that you play lockdown defense and you can get to the rim. I mean, what else do you need to do in order to be successful with basketball? The Spurs have covered all that with their roster. It's just that they have to continue to build the trust, and we saw that tonight. They look good tonight, not just as the 5 that were on the floor. Anybody that stepped on the floor was huge. So when you continue to see that, and you continue to see them getting better as the year goes on, that's why you start talking about a deep playoff run. So I get you on that, and that's one thing that I love about our showcases. We're going to be honest both ways. Whether they win, they lose, or indifference. Even in wins, we point out the flaws. So don't feel too bad.
I didn't say I felt bad.
Oh, okay.
I didn't say I'm not admitting. I'm admitting that that's the way I am, but guilt. I don't feel bad. I don't feel bad about that.
Ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into a reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on an NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for 2. That's right, flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in. Not only can your pick cash, but it could also send you to the finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Welcome back to the Big 6 in 60. The Falcons decided to put the franchise tag on tight end Kyle Pitts to give Atlanta another year to try and make a deal with the 5-year veteran. Aaron Freeman breaks down the numbers behind Pitts' new deal on Locked On Falcons.
Let's get into the news of the day, which is Kyle Pitts is expected to be tagged. I doubt it will be official until next week, when it will potentially cost the Falcons north of $16 million. Current overthecap.com projections for the franchise tag for tight ends is $16.3 million. It is the safe choice, right? It basically gives this new regime a year to evaluate Kyle Pitts to see if he can continue and maintain his high level of play that he finished off the 2025 season with. Now, there have been multiple insiders out there that have been reporting that the Falcons want to work out a long-term deal with Kyle Pitts. We'll see on that front. I'm not 100% sold. That is the plan right now. It seems more likely, I think, that the Falcons will just kind of let it play out, but I'm sure they will say all the things that they need to say, like, oh, we do want to pay Kyle Pitts, but then when we get to that deadline in mid-July, a deal won't get done. But again, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it in 5 months. And it's not necessarily because I don't think Kyle Pitts is worth paying. I think Kyle Pitts is definitely worth paying for somebody. I just don't know if that somebody is the Atlanta Falcons. And that's mostly because of what we talked about last week, where Kyle Pitts doesn't really complement the two main stars in Atlanta, which are Bijan Robinson and Drake London. The bulk of Kyle Pitts' production last year came in the final 7 games when he basically was the de facto number one receiver in the offense when Drake London was out of the lineup. And the question, of course, is, can Kyle Pitts perform when Drake London is in the lineup? Because we really haven't seen that throughout their 4 years working together. We saw that for one game last season. That was the week 4 game against Washington, and really none of the other games. Like, when Pitts is on, Drake is quiet. When Drake is on, Pitts is relatively quiet. That prior to Drake's injury, Kyle Pitts was performing much closer to an average starting tight end, the 15th best tight end in the NFL, as opposed to the 2nd or 3rd best tight end in the NFL that his final number said. But, of course, this time it's going to be different with a new head coach in Kevin Stefanski, a new play caller in Tommy Rees. That's going to be the big challenge for both of those guys. That can they consistently get top 5 tight end play out of Kyle Pitts? What we saw in the final 2 months of the season, will we see that for the entire 4 months of this upcoming season? And on top of that, continue to maintain the top 5 wide receiver play that we have seen from Drake London at his best. And on top of that, still have Bijan Robinson be considered the best running back in the NFL. And that's always been the goal. That's always been the vision of this specific skill group of players, of we're going to have top 5 players at every main skill position group. And who's going to stop this Falcons offense? That has been the bet that the Falcons been making for 3 years. And of course, if you're the new GM of the Falcons, Ian Cunningham, the best bets that you can make are all the same bets that Terry Fontenot made these last few years. Any GM worth his salt is going to just completely quadruple down on all the Terry Fontenot bets. But, I'm being sarcastic just because it really hasn't delivered that vision. But again, this time it's going to be different, right? We're going to have the same skill guys, the same basic offensive line for, now the 4th year in a row. We're going to talk about this report from Jason La Canfora that was posted over at sportsboom.us. Jason La Canfora, formerly a bigwig NFL insider, has sort of fallen by the wayside the last few years. We did talk a little bit about his report that came out, I want to say in late November, early December, about Raheem being as good as gone and being skeptical on Jason La Canfora's hit rate when it came to especially Falcons news over the years. He got that one right, although again, it was like basically a coin toss. Either Raheem was getting fired or he wasn't getting fired. It wasn't, any sort of deep insight. It's like you had a 50% shot of being right. But, the point of this conversation that we're going to have on today's episode is not to basically, endorse this report as true, right? That's not really the point of today. It's really about giving us an opportunity to talk about the Falcons quarterback options, as we've been talking about for the last few weeks, and really to explore more deeply the first bucket of quarterbacks more in depth on today's episode that we really haven't. We've only kind of, brushed the surface of the last couple of weeks on this podcast. So let's get, this report. And there was sort of 2 sections that really kind of stood out in this report. And the first section said, Penix's performance and leadership has fallen under question in Atlanta. And according to sources with knowledge of the process, as Matt Ryan led the hunt for a new head coach and began probing as to why Penix has not developed as expected, several troubling trends emerged. Penix felt the need to apologize to his teammates at times last season for his sideline demeanor and actions, though displays of poor body language and decision-making continued through the season, and new coach Kevin Stefanski, who lived through years of quarterback turmoil during his stint in Cleveland, will be seeking to find more stability at the all-important position now. Then later, La Canfora wrote, the expectation among those with a portal into the team's thinking is that the Falcons won't just be pursuing someone to man the position while Penix recovers, but to attempt to find a superior option to him, if possible, and prepare for a scenario in which he is not their top choice in 2026. He quotes a source that says, it's not just going to be a warm body, veteran minimum type guy. I can promise you that. Said by one source privy to some of Atlanta's internal discussions about the quarterback position during their interviews with candidates for the head coaching search. There are some definite concerns there about Penix taking the next step on several levels. It's been a lot worse there than people really know. One general manager who expects to be very active pursuing quarterbacks himself said, Atlanta is looking for a starting quarterback. I know that much. We are definitely looking at them as competition. I think they're going to be in on everything. It's not good there with Penix. So those are the main quotes that we are gleaning here on this podcast from Jason La Canfora. As sort of discussed on the Falcon squad very briefly on Monday, I think the leadership conversation, the body language, demeanor, all that stuff, early in that article is worth having a conversation about in the future. We're not going to have that conversation today, but we are going to have a conversation and revisit the whole bucket talk when it comes to the Falcons. 3 quarterback options, 3 buckets that their quarterback options this offseason can come in. That first bucket is the starter bucket. That's the Kirk Cousins bucket. That's a guy that you bring in to basically be the new starter. And that's essentially what this article is saying. We're going to get a bucket number 1 guy. The second bucket is the bridge quarterback bucket. That is the Marcus Mariota bucket, where it's like, oh, this guy is going to be the starter probably early in the season, throughout the offseason, early in the season. But eventually the expectation is we are going to pivot from that bridge guy to Michael Penix, right? Like we saw the Falcons do with Mariota back in 2022 with Desmond Ridder, right? The difference between that starter bucket and bridge bucket is a starter guy. The expectation is there's not going to be a pivot. That is assuming the starter performs well enough to maintain his starting job. He will keep his starting job. But the bridge guy is much more of a guy. Either you don't have those expectations that he's going to play well enough to keep his job, and that's not really the goal. It's just more he's keeping that seat warm. And then the third bucket is the backup bucket. That's the Taylor Heineke bucket. That's a guy that you're bringing in purely to be a backup, but if need be, and he has to start some games for whatever reason, you're comfortable with him doing that. And so we've been operating under the assumption for these last few weeks that the Falcons were going to be most likely targeting that bridge bucket of quarterbacks this offseason, probably looking for a short-term veteran solution. The Joe Flacco's, the Jacoby Brissett's, Geno Smith is another name that we've thrown out there. Justin Fields, another guy that fits into that sort of second bucket of quarterbacks, mostly because we believe that 2026 is going to be an evaluation year for the bulk of this roster, including the quarterback position. Going back to what we talked about with Kyle Pitts, it's going to be an evaluation year for him, playing under the franchise tag. And a big reason why we think that is just because there's not that many good options available for the Falcons at quarterback this offseason, but there may be better options for the team in 2027, and you want to have a fully informed decision on Michael Penix as well as the rest of the roster before you make any sort of big, bold move, any big, bold pivots in 2027, particularly when it comes to drafting another young quarterback high in what is supposed to be a deep quarterback draft in 2027. But again, what this article is essentially saying is that we should be having a much deeper conversation about, rather than that bridge bucket, the Falcons will be shopping in that starting quarterback bucket, that first bucket. And we've talked about 3 quarterbacks that fit that bucket in Mac Jones, Malik Willis, and Kirk Cousins, assuming that the Falcons cut him and then bring him back on a new deal. And he would fit into that bucket mostly because Kirk Cousins is not coming back to Atlanta unless he has assurances that he's not going to have to look over his shoulder with Michael Penix. And again, whether or not he will believe those assurances coming from the Atlanta Falcons organization, given the last time people at the top of the organization gave him assurances about, the security of his starting job. If you don't know what I'm talking about Raheem and Terry. It would be certainly debatable if Kirk is going to buy that, but it's a whole new regime. Again, this time it's going to be different.
Ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into a reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on an NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for two. That's right, flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in. Not only can your pick cash, but it could also send you to the finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Welcome back to the Big 6 in 60. The Chiefs have spent the offseason freeing up cap space and kept that trend going by releasing edge rusher Mike Dana this week. Locked On Chiefs hosts Ryan Tracy and Chris Clark explain the move.
News today, this afternoon, that Mike Dana has been released. A little bit surprising because I didn't think it would be the first release that they did.
That's
but
where
it
I'm coming
has
from
been.
too.
It's a little... catch you off guard a little bit, but they do it because it's a little over $2 million in dead money, and they save $9 million against the cap, which gives them a new number and a fresh lease on life. Now they have other moves that can make them significant cap space. What's your take, capologist, on what this does and the reasoning?
I was surprised that they did this move. This actually makes me curious as to if they're going to do something with Taylor other than what we've been talking about for the past 2 months. I don't know that makes a ton of sense unless they're going to extend him and drastically drop his number and drop his APY. But it's possible that that's the direction they go. We'll see what they end up doing. The interesting thing on this is the Chiefs broke it. That's the interesting thing to me. The Chiefs literally broke this news themselves. We didn't hear this from anybody else. They just straight up said, thank you for your service and goodbye.
Cheers, Mike. Now, let's be real. Mike has done a lot of good work.
Oh, yeah.
He's been a very solid player and contributor to Super Bowls. He's been here a long time. The fact is that the pass rush equivalent is what the game is about right now. He's not at the level that this contract year was about. Now, I theorized last week that he could still come back. If he finds not much of a market, he could do a Mike Pennell and come back on a lower end scale, and we'll see what happens. Always good to have depth that knows what you're doing. But I took this very similarly to how you did, except I jumped to another conclusion. And I'm going to run this past you. You tell me if I'm super crazy. But by getting Mike released first, it allows him to catch on with another team before free agency hits, which I think does him a service. And I think this is a good thing for Mike Dana. But it also allows them and tells me that by holding on to Jawaan Taylor, maybe there's another thing besides an extension in his future. Good tackles are hard to find in this league.
Yeah.
And he has been a good tackle. Maybe there's trade value out there for Jawaan Taylor right now. And they're working on trying to get that done before the deadline, which is coming up in 17 days?
Well, look at what they got for Joe Tooney last year. And Tooney, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say Taylor's on the same level as Tooney. He's not. But you're absolutely right. When you start looking at this at the NFL and offensive line play in general, you cannot get enough good offensive line play, get enough good offensive linemen. So to me, it doesn't necessarily mean that it could be an extension. It could be that they're trying to do something with his number and lower it and get an extension maybe, or it could be that they're looking to trade him. I mean, a trade would make sense if they can get some kind of draft pick back and get to a point where they have at least 7 draft picks versus the 6 that they have right now.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to look up his ranking right now, but gut feel, I don't think Mike Dana had trade value, but if Jawaan does, what is it?
Depends on where the team it depends on what team is interested in where they are cap wise. I mean, because the reality for the team taking him on, since I wasn't ready for this, give me 1 second. Let me pull up his contract. I mean, so really, for the Chiefs, if they traded him, they would still be at the same spot that they are right now, basically. Like, so the team that would trade for him would only owe him $20 million, which for an offensive tackle isn't horrible.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and does it still give them the cap relief that they're looking for?
Yeah, it would.
Okay.
Because you still take away the guaranteed salary, which is $20 million. The dead money is the prorated bonus that is left on his contract. So you would still, at that point, you'd still have that dead money of almost $7.4 million, but you would free up the $20 million. So yeah, I mean that would take you to $17 million in cap space, and that's taking into account the Mike Dana deal already. So that's definitely enough cap space to get some stuff done. Probably not enough to do what you really want to do in free agency. And we can talk about what it's going to cost in some of these other positions. But this goes back to what we've kind of talked about a lot over the last couple of weeks is what's the value of the positions and can you find it? Because to me, that's why I don't like taking Jeremiah Love at number 9. I understand maybe he's the best player. Maybe that's what you end up having to do. But if you can get somebody that is a higher premium position, like a wide receiver or a defensive end, your value is much better there because you're offsetting a contract that's $30 million a year versus a guy that's making 5 or 6 in most running back situations.
That makes a lot of sense to me. And when I look at value here, he gave up 20 pressures on the season, less than Ronnie Stanley at 28. Less than Abe Lucas, half of what Olu Fashanu is, a guy that was a very high draft pick, about the same as Darnell Wright, half of Alaric Johnson, and right up there with Brian O'Neill. Like performance,
and he played injured most of the season too. Just to throw that out there.
Absolutely. Now I know what people are saying. Yeah, Ryan, that's great. How many penalties did he have? So I'm going to pull that up too because I know that plays into it. It was 8. And that is significant. I want to say that's third. No, it is the top. It is the most penalized tackle in the league. So there is that. You're not going to get a prime draft pick in return. But you might get a third rounder. You might get a top 100 because tackles are hard to find.
I don't know. If they can get a top 100, they ought to be running to the commission. Like they should be sending an intern to run to New York just
with a steak dinner as a tip.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You never know what somebody's willing to pay and how desperate they are to not pay free agency numbers. That's true. That's the question. So.
And that's the other question. Like, if you go look at really quick, since we're talking about this, if you go look at the offensive tackle position, let's see, right tackle. Your right tackles on average are getting. I mean, Juwan Taylor's 6th in the NFL. When you look at the cap numbers, if you look at just in 2026, what will Taylor be? Taylor is he's 4th in cap number, but if you're a trading team, he would be like 10th.
And there's all kinds of deals. And maybe that's what this signals. You have to maybe eat some of that salary, which maybe the Chiefs can do. Maybe that's part of the negotiation that needs to go on continually.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of different ways you can go about it with that. What I was trying to see, I mean, is there any right tackle out there that you think is great that you would want to go sign? Evan Neal. I mean, there aren't great names at that position, so it's going to be hard to find something in free agency if you want a offensive tackle. So to me, that makes a lot of sense if they think they can get a draft pick. And to be clear, now you're in a situation when you release Mike Dana, the teams are going to know about where they think your cap situation is. They're going to know you're only a couple million from being compliant for the new league year. So your bargaining power is a little bit greater now at that point, and you're getting ready to go to the scouting combine later this week, which is where a lot of this stuff will get discussed and talked about. So all of that plays into what you're talking about and what you said right there.
Deals get done at the combine, folks. Chiefs currently at 3.29 in cap space, under cap space.
Ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into a reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on an NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for two. That's right, flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in. Not only can your pick cash, but it could also send you to the finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Welcome back to the Big 6 in 60. NC State got a legacy commitment to start the week as Phillip Rivers' son Gunnar committed to play for his dad's old school. The younger Rivers is one of the top 10 quarterbacks in the class of 2027, and Grayson Boone joins Kenton Gibbs on Locked On Wolfpack to tell you the impact of the commitment.
The Eagle, well, hasn't quite landed yet, but is committed to land in Raleigh, North Carolina. Top 10 quarterback in the 2027 recruiting class, Gunnar Rivers. Yes, that Gunnar Rivers has committed to the NC State Wolfpack, the first high school age son of Phillip Rivers. And I say first because obviously, there will be more. Gunnar Rivers, he is an elite prospect in the 2027 class. As I said, he's widely regarded as a top 10 quarterback in that class, depending on which recruiting service you tend to look at. But obviously, he has the pedigree. He has the name, the legacy aspect of this for NC State. Dave Dorn and this NC State football recruiting staff, they have landed the legacy recruit of a lifetime.
Well, Grayson, we never talk politics on this show, but I believe we're going to get about, 4 or 5 more representatives in the House based on the Rivers plan coming back this way?
Yes, sir.
I mean, boy, they bring a whole gaggle of kids with them. But in all seriousness, Gunnar is a big-time quarterback, right? When you talk about the quarterbacks that we've had and the player development that we've had here, I want you to guess, Grayson, when's the last time we had a quarterback rated this highly coming to the pack?
I was going to say maybe Devin Leary, but I think, the legacy aspect of this, it just makes the whole ordeal bigger.
Exactly. And mind you, if we're talking strictly hey, when's the last time we had a 4-star quarterback? It's been quite some time, but let alone a 4-star legacy of an NFL player, an NFL Hall of Famer, might I add, who, if he didn't keep setting back his clock to get in the Hall of Fame every couple of years because somebody calls him off the couch, he'd probably already be in. So, this is a massive, massive get for the Pack. And here's the thing. When you bring in that good quarterback, a lot of the pickups that we got in the portal were skill position guys. You don't think it's easy to sell a guy? Hey, listen, that school over there may be offering you $30,000 more, but their quarterback, I mean, come on now. He's throwing shrimp po' boys out there. That boy is throwing the sweet onion chicken teriyaki right down the middle of the field. You understand? You come on over here, and this quarterback is going to change your life. He's going to make teams finally recognize you as the NFL talent you are. We're seeing that effect with CJ Bailey. If Gunnar can live up to the expectations that are being placed upon him, and let me make this clear. I said this about Cam Boozer earlier, and I also want to apply this to Gunnar Rivers, right? Let's not go out there throwing out words like, oh, he's a generational recruit and all that type of stuff. Because here's the thing. When you throw out words like that, they mean something. If you call a guy generational, you know what that means? You see him once in a generation. Now, I'm not saying anybody's saying that Gunnar is generational, but I'm saying the expectations put upon him should be, hey, we're expecting a damn good quarterback. We're expecting the kid that's going to come in here, do things the right way, progress, get better. And there are 3 categories of quarterbacks that I believe you have, okay? I say this a lot. If you've been here for a while, you already know what I'm going to say. You have quarterbacks that you win because of, meaning Lamar Jackson at Louisville. That was a quarterback you won because of. If you take Lamar off that team, they might win 4 games a year. But because Lamar was putting up video game numbers, you win because of him. Cam Newton at Auburn. That's another one that you win because of. You can even do it with pocket passers. Drew Brees when he was at Purdue. That's a quarterback that you win because of. And then you got your quarterbacks that you win with. He's not great. He's not terrible. He's not going to kill you, but he's not going to win you a game. Think what Lil Ben Finley did against the Dirty Foot Club a couple years ago, right? He didn't have a terrible game. He didn't have a great game. He was just steady as she goes, right? That's what you're looking for out of most college quarterbacks. You're happy if you get a we can win with this guy. Like he's just the quarterback from Penn State comes to mind. Drew Aller, the quarterback you win with. You know, everybody thought that he was a great like top tier guy, but he was a guy that you win with ultimately. Like
I got one for you, Brennan Armstrong. Not exactly because of him, but we won with him.
Well, I would say Brennan Armstrong, he blurs the lines a little bit because he was like an upper tier. He was an upper tier win with, lower tier win because it was moments where you're like, every quarterback can pull up those types of runs, but win because of a win with, he's fine enough, right? Like, don't make him throw the ball 40 times. Don't make him run the ball 15 times and you're good. That level of quarterback. And then there's a quarterback that you have to win in spite of.
Right.
With all due respect, I don't need to name names. We've had a few of them, right? We've had a few guys where it's like, if this dude could just not kill us, we'd be okay.
If y'all are our age or older, you can name a couple.
Listen, okay? That I remember that Thayer Thomas down there somewhere. Never mind, we're not going to get into that. Anywho, the reality is we've all seen the three categories of quarterbacks. And to me, I don't need Gunner to be the upper echelon of win because of. Because the upper echelon of win because of, that's Heisman winner. That's first rounder, all that type of stuff. To me, if he's at like the lower end of win because of, upper end of win with, I'm all right with that. If that's his ceiling, I'm all right with that. Now, if he shuts me up and says, oh, no. From day one when I walk on campus, I'm the guy that you win because of, I'm happy to have that. But let's not place expectations on him of like, if he walks out of here without a Heisman, if he walks out of here without a 11-win season, if he walks out of here without a playoff, hey, let's slow that down. But I think he'll be just fine.
That's all for today's Big 6 in 60. If you follow basketball, football, or college sports, the Big 3 in 30 has a half hour on the biggest news in the NFL, the NBA, and on campus, going up every weekday just like this one. Just search the Big 3 in 30 NBA, the Big 3 in 30 NFL, or the Big 3 in 30 college, wherever you're listening or watching now. Thanks again for tuning in to the Big 6 in 60.